Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Mike Maddock on the line. He's founder and CEO of Flourish Forums and Maddock Douglas Inc., and he's also a 3-time best-selling author and expert on growth, leadership, and innovation. Mike, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Adam. Thank you.
All right, Mike, so I'm excited about today's episode. We're going to talk about one of the reports that you just came out with recently, so 007, the future of professional advice. Also be talking about really blind spots and how companies can benefit from, seeing those blind spots and taking action, really. So excited to get into that and a whole lot more that we have to talk about. But before we do, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Mike, we at Mission Matters amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Mike, what mission matters to you?
So years ago, I was in a room with Simon Sinek before he wrote any books, and he was doing his Start With Why speech. And he pressed me. He said, "What is your purpose? What's your purpose?" I thought about it for a long time. And whether I'm writing books, talking from a stage, or working in any of my businesses, my purpose is to inspire and empower curiosity, which means I want to make leaders believe they can change the world, and I want to give them the tools, the connections, or the frameworks to make it happen.
It's awesome. Love bringing mission-based individuals on the line to share why they do what they do and really how they're out there in the marketplace, adding value, because that's what it's all about. So, again, great to have you on the show. I think maybe just to get this thing kicked off, let's go a little bit further into your businesses before we go further. So, Flourish Forums, Maddock Douglas Inc. Tell us a little bit more about the companies.
So, I tell my friends that I'm a really great starter and a bad finisher. I've started 7 different companies. Yeah, it's good and bad. All the businesses I've started have to do with brand strategy, new product development, and really the central theme is blind spots. What is it that you're missing as a leader that keeps you from putting a bigger dent in the universe? So really, that everything that I do is trying to discover and take advantage of a leader's blind spots.
That's great. And so what types of companies get the most value out of typically working with you and your team? Is this only for enterprise teams? Is this for middle market? Do you work with small business owners as well? Like, just a kind of a feel. Is it industry agnostic? Give us a little bit of a feel for who typically is a good fit.
Yes, I'll be a little bit more specific. For example, MacGuffin Creative Group is a company I founded in Chicago. I'm a co-founder. That is a marketing communications firm that works primarily with financial services and healthcare organizations, companies you've heard of. Maddock Douglas is a new product strategy firm. We've been around for 30 years, and we've done work with about 25% of the Fortune 100, a tremendous amount of work in insurance and financial services. But, we've worked with Kellogg's and Kraft and other companies you've heard of as well. And then Flourish Forums is a virtual advisory board. It's a peer group for P&L leaders who are looking for a group of peers that will help them unravel their toughest challenges and see their blind spots. And that's the newest company that I'm working on.
Awesome. Okay, let's go a little bit further into this concept of blind spots. Maybe let's define that, because I feel like, when somebody listens to them, like blind spots, we know we have them maybe intuitively, or maybe even more of fears. If we're an entrepreneur, we don't think we have them. That's a little bit more dangerous there. But how do we know if we have blind spots?
Okay, so let me start with a phrase that I like to say. It's memorable. You can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. If you've been working on a challenge, an industry, or a relationship for more than 6 months, you know what you've tried, you know what your boss wants you to do, you know what you can afford, you know what's legal, you know. Congratulations, you're an expert. And that expertise is a trap because it keeps you from seeing possibility when it's walking right in front of you. So if you're an expert, almost by definition, you have developed blind spots. So that's one symptom. Another symptom is that if you keep trying to solve the same problem, this is a tenet in design thinking. If there's something that's been frustrating you a long time, you keep trying to solve the same problem again and again and again, you're probably working on the wrong problem. That's a blind spot. So there's a couple of ways to think about blind spots.
Oh, that makes so much sense too. It really does if you think about it. So, and when you, and this idea of some of the things we talked about, why your biggest ideas will come from outside your business. If you're sitting in that jar, as you mentioned, so to use your words, if you're sitting in that jar, you can't read the label, and you also can't see what is necessarily coming next. So how does somebody start to, obviously, this is a podcast interview. We're not going to solve everybody's problems in one interview. We know that. I don't want to oversimplify this when I ask this question, but a lot of CEOs, a lot of leaders, a lot of executives that listen to this show, how do they even start going down that path of discovering what the blind spots are? How do they begin that process?
So I'll give you another clever, catchy phrase that we came up with here to just to make this point about blind spots. A Napster moment is what happens when you have a blind spot, or what can happen. A Napster moment is when someone with no business being in your business comes along and puts you out of business, just like a 16-year-old kid did to the record industry. And keep in mind that the 16-year-old kid that started Napster was just trying to solve one of his problems. He wasn't trying to take any industry down. He just was trying to solve a problem that big companies, big record executives didn't believe existed. So that's why blind spots matter. I believe that every executive should have at least three things: a coach, an operating system, which is a scoreboard that is co-created by their team, and then a peer group, a forum. And I believe the forum should be highly curated so that it functions to complement your strengths and your weaknesses. Said differently, it can't be a bunch of people like you in the group. And the reason I started Flourish forums was because I've been in forums myself for the better part of 30 years. And that my best friends, the closest people I am to in the world are forum mates that I've, laughed with, cried with, traveled with, etc. But even then, those forums weren't built with any intentionality. And so oftentimes we saw things the same way. And with Flourish forums, I wanted at least 6 characters. I wanted an operator, a strategist, a rainmaker, a visionary, a tech futurist, and an orchestrator. And I test executives, so your peers, and put you in a virtual group so that every time you bring a challenge, you don't get blindsided because you see that challenge at least 6 through the lenses of 6 different types of leaders. So that's I think the best practice of seeing blind spots. The challenge is it's really hard to put an advisory board together. How do you compensate them?
Oh my gosh.
How do you find them? It's hard. And so that's the challenge I was trying to solve with Flourish Forums.
Yeah, it's great, and I've checked out your website, so flourishforums.com, and that what you just mentioned in terms of the 6 components that make up the forum or make up the group. They're all laid out there too. So the people listening to this, I definitely encourage you to go back and check out flourishforums.com, and you can see all the different categories there. What kind of feedback have you received from this? I'm curious.
Well, it's been awesome. Most of the best feedback I've gotten is that I have CEOs in one forum asking to put operating presidents from their company in other forums. So that's pretty good endorsement.
Oh, wow. That is a great endorsement. Mm-hmm.
It's also, what's interesting is I've had members call me offline and say things like, man, I feel kind of bad because that last presentation, I saw it completely differently. I mean, I totally didn't agree with the direction the presenter was going. And that's the point. You know, I remember the first time I was in a forum, I was young. I think I was 25 years old. And in my mind, I went around the table and selected who was going to help me the most. You know, like, yes, yes, no, no way, no way. And looking back 15 years later, I was completely wrong. It was the people that pissed me off, the people that saw the world so completely differently that, like, I would be mad. Like, that is so rude. Why would you ask a question like that? That was my blind spot. And those are the people that we need to surround ourselves with. But we don't. We hire people we like. We hire people we get along with. We hire people, you know, that see the world the way we do. And we do it unconsciously. We're not trying to. So I wound up with a company that went from $3 million to $15 million inside of 3 years in terms of revenue, and then back down to $8 million the next year. That's when I tested my executive team, right after writing a best-selling book about executive teams, by the way. And I was horrified to find out we all saw the world very similarly, even though we had different titles like COO and CEO and CFO. I had unwittingly hired people that saw the world the same way, or said differently, they reacted to challenges in similar ways. We were really good at starting things, but not so good at finishing them.
Let's shift focus slightly here. So the future of professional advice, 007. Let's dive into that. Where'd that title come up from, first of all?
Well, so when the pandemic hit, we thought that things were going to change forever. We thought that the world would never be the same. And so what we decided to do was spend a whole bunch of money on a study about what advice, professional advice, would look like on the other side of the pandemic. And we called it 007 because, you know, agents, you know, real estate agents, insurance agents, they give advice. So it was our internal term, Project 007, secret agent. And we did a prediction market. Are you familiar with the prediction market, Adam? You know what that is?
I'm not, no.
Okay, so the stock market is a prediction market. A gambler's book is a prediction market. A prediction market, the best way I can explain it is, when you go to a state fair or a church bazaar and there's a giant jar of marbles, and if you guess the number of marbles or gumdrops in the jar, you win money or you win some kind of prize. So if you're the first person to guess, chances are you're going to get it wrong. But if you're the 1,000th person to guess and you get to see all the notes and the calculation of the 999 people that guessed before you, chances are you're going to be much more right. And that's how our prediction market works. What we do is we go and we interview all kinds of consumers. We interviewed about 1,000 consumers that pay for professional advice. And then we did another prediction market where we interviewed professional advisors. And from that qualitative research, we came up with a bunch of predictions, 9 bold predictions. And we went out and asked the crowd, the wisdom of the crowd, all of us are smarter than any of us, what they would predict. I won't bore you with what happens when you ask the crowd, but I will say that it's much more accurate than just asking a person what they will do, because it gets complicated. People are better at predicting what other people will do than predicting what they will do, which is weird. Anyway, so we went out and made 9 bold predictions and asked the crowd how likely it was going to happen. The other thing that's cool about a prediction market is not only will it tell you how likely it is to happen, and you can peel that by generation, like how likely the millennials, how likely the professionals, et cetera. You can also predict when it's going to happen. So from a strategy perspective, sure, that's going to happen, but it's going to be 7 years, whereas this other prediction, the crowd thinks it's going to happen 2 years, so we better get working on that prediction right now. So we made 9 bold predictions and asked the crowd, and this is research that's pretty new, and I'm actually on stage now presenting this to people who care about the future advice, but I'll give you an example. Here's a prediction. In the year 2023, what percentage of consumers will follow non-professional, non-celebrity influencers who do their own extensive research as the primary source of advice before making important financial decisions, such as what stocks to invest in, which insurance products are best, or when to purchase or sell a home. So what do you think? What do you think the crowd said? In 2023, how many of us are going to go to a non-professional to make decisions first about, like, investing in stocks?
Let's say 40%.
Great. So the experts, we did two prediction markets, one with professional advisors, and then we peeled the data. The professional advisors said 89%. 89% would go to first as a primary person. And if you step back from this, it makes sense, because when you decide what wine to buy or what car to buy or what watch to buy, you've got a wine guy, you got a watch girl, you have an expert, you have a friend that are more relatable. You call them and say, what do you think? You have a Bitcoin guy, you have a real estate person, and people call those people now because they're easier to find before the person is actually making money doing it. It's more authentic. You don't care as much about followers. You care about their own integrity and expertise. And this is kind of cool. The crowd said people who have successfully started their own business, entrepreneurs, will be the most successful, being seen as these natural researchers. What's also interesting in this prediction is that 87% of millennials, millennials predicted this as 87%. So you've got the experts predicting it at 89%, and millennials predicting it 87%. But guess what? Boomers predicted it at much lower. And the challenge is that many companies, remember, you can't read a label when you're sitting inside the jar. Mm-hmm. The experts at most companies are not millennials. These are older people who've made millions and millions of dollars doing something a certain way. And so when you come to them and say, hey, in the future, people are going to do this, they're going to say, no, that's not true. And you should trust me, because I'm the CEO. And look at my gold watch. I've made cajillions. It's always been done this way. And that's how a Napster moment happens. So that's an example of how the wisdom of the crowd or a prediction market can tell you, what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. You want another one?
Yeah, you got to give us another one.
Okay, one more, and I'll spare you the story, but actually I'll tell you the story. So years ago, we worked with a company called Invest Tools. And Invest Tools was a brochure that turned into a website, that turned into trading, that turned into software, that turned into Thinkorswim software that TD Ameritrade bought for $600 million. And while we were working with them, we were doing research to discover, what consumers wanted from a brochure, from software, et cetera. And there was this critical moment in time where people wanted to do research and then they wanted to push a button and be able to buy a stock. That was critical because up until that point, there's this church and state that you couldn't be objective. You had to separate those until you didn't. And that kind of aha moment became critical and a reason why a company like TD Ameritrade would go buy Thinkorswim. So if you watch sports, you've seen their advertisements. And there's this guy, I call him the bearded wonder, who's walking around his green office on the couch and he's pointing at his little iPad or laptop going, hey, look, we've got this software. It's called Thinkorswim. And, you can make investments and be really smart. And because of our experience with Thinkorswim, we had a hunch that he was actually advertising to advisors, not consumers. In other words, our hunch was that he was actually trying to get professional advisors to come on board because of this cool platform. So we made a prediction about it. So the prediction is, in the future, all advisors will choose which platform they want to work with rather than which company they want to sell for. So again, in the future, all advisors will choose which platform they want to work with rather than which company they want to sell for. So, okay, so what percentage of experts do you think agreed with that? Expert advisors.
Ooh, don't know, maybe 50?
88%.
Wow.
And what percentage and how long do you think they predicted that it'll take for that to happen? So in the future, the prediction market will actually say how many years in the future this will be so. So how many years do you think it'll take before advisors are picking platforms before companies?
Maybe like 10.
3.9 years. Millennials predicted this is 80% true. So there's this axiom in innovation land that you look for behavior that's already happening. Bill Gates famously said he had lost a lot of money by trying to change people's behavior. And when Bill Gates is worried about losing money, I listen. So we already do this. You pick TripAdvisor over Trivago because of the ease of the platform. People pick Uber because it's easier than Lyft or vice versa. Drivers choose to work for Uber or Lyft because they like the platform better. So a way to think about this prediction is Robert Downey Jr. plays Tony Stark and he's got this vibranium suit. So he is handsome, he's smart, he's rich, but when he puts on the suit, when he uses the platform, now he's a superhero. And so we believe in the future that these platforms will make the best advisors superheroes. It'll allow them to be more empathic. They'll understand if they're talking to a millennial or a boomer, what they care about most. I mean, I can go on and on about this prediction, but it will shift. It's shifting the way that advisors work in the future.
Wow, that's amazing. How do people get access to the study or just connect? Like, how does that work?
Well, if we have not published the study, we're actually people are calling us and asking them to present to their boards or conferences, awesome. And that's what we're doing. So I mentioned it to you in our pre-call, and you wanted to hear more about it. So I
had to. Well, because we learned a couple of things here. Number one, we obviously learned some of the results, but we also learned that I'm terrible at prediction.
We are.
Could you be any more far off? I'm in.
So Adam, I want to just put a dot on one of the points, because when I have a number of good friends that own financial service advisory companies, and I asked one of my friends what was the average age of his advisors. He said, I don't know, probably 60. And I said, what's the average age of your customers? And he said, probably about 63 or 64, because they're right up against retirement. Now, this guy has thousands of customers, but the challenge is that you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. When you look at this prediction market study, the millennials thought this is going to happen, but the boomers did not. The Gen Xers didn't. They see the world differently. So the beauty of peer groups, the beauty of a prediction market is it allows the crowd to speak to you and reveal a blind spot that you might not be able to see because you're an expert.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, it's really been a pleasure having you on the show today and learning more about your background and really how you're helping executives and organizations eliminate these blind spots. So if that being said, if somebody is listening to this or watching this and they want to learn more and to connect with you and your team, what's the best way for them to do that?
It's really easy. It's mike@maddockdouglas.com. or mike@flourishforums.com, plural, Flourish Forums. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, and I'm pretty easy to find. I'm happy to help you if I can.
That's awesome. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters, first off, we're going to put all of Mike's information, all that good stuff in the show notes, so you can just click on the links and head right on over. And also, if this is your first time with the platform, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them, share why they do what they do, how they do it, and really just tips that we can all learn from to grow together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or engaging or fun to you, then we definitely welcome you to hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Mike, really, it has been a pleasure. Thanks again for coming on the show.
My great pleasure, Adam. Thank you.
All right, Mike. So we will cut the audio there. Man, I mean, you're obviously an expert and a pro at this stuff. So nice, a smooth interview, a lot of content, rich advice in there. So thank you. It was a great show. Next steps, just so you know from our end, my team's pretty fast, so this will be live within 10 business days. When it does go live, you'll get an email from one of my assistants, and I also see we have Stephanie's email as well on here, so we'll definitely make sure Stephanie's in that email, and that'll have all of the raw content for you. If you need anything else from us, of course, just hit the reply button, and we're there for you, okay?
All right, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
All right, wonderful. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.
All right, cheers. Bye-bye.